The winter wind howled across the Dakota plains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of snow and survival. Chief Tahatan stood at the edge of his village, his dark eyes scanning the horizon where earth met sky in an endless stretch of frozen grassland. His people called him the Hawk because nothing escaped his notice. Today, something caught his attention that would change everything. A figure stumbled through the snow, moving with the desperate energy of someone who had forgotten how to stop. At first, Tahatan thought it might be a wounded deer, the way it lurched and fell, rose and stumbled forward again. But as the shape drew closer, he realized with cold certainty that it was a woman. A white woman, dressed in torn clothing that offered no protection against the brutal cold. Her feet left trails of blood in the pristine snow. Tahatan moved without thinking, his long legs carrying him swiftly across the frozen ground. When he reached her, she collapsed into his arms like a bundle of broken sticks. Her lips were blue, her skin the color of death itself. Frost clung to her eyelashes and tangled blonde hair. She whispered something he couldn't understand, words slurred by cold and trauma, before her eyes rolled back and consciousness left her completely. He carried her back to the village, and the whispers began before he even reached his teepee. The Lakota people had learned painful lessons about white settlers. They brought disease, broken treaties, and violence. They took land and gave nothing but suffering in return. To bring one into their village, especially in winter when resources were scarce and survival uncertain, seemed like madness. Winona, the tribe's healer and Tahatan's grandmother, met him at his teepee entrance. Her weathered face showed no surprise, only the calm acceptance of someone who had seen too much life to be shocked by anything. She examined the unconscious woman with practiced hands, noting the bruises that covered her arms, the rope burns on her wrists, the older scars that spoke of prolonged suffering. She has been through fire, Winona said quietly in their language. Whether she survives depends on whether she wants to. The body can heal, but the spirit must choose life. For 3 days, the woman burned with fever. She thrashed and screamed, calling out names and begging in English for mercy from people who weren't there. Tahatan and Winona took turns watching over her, cooling her fever with snow water and forcing healing teas between her cracked lips. The village elders came to Tahatan's teepee, their faces grave with concern. "This is not wise, Tahatan," said Chaitan, the oldest among them. "We do not know who she is or what danger she brings. Her people may come looking for her. They may blame us for whatever fate brought her to this state." Tahatan met the elder's gaze steadily. "Would you have me leave her to die in the snow? Is that who we have become? The Wasichu take our land and our dignity, but I will not let them take our humanity. We are Lakota. We do not abandon those who suffer, regardless of their skin." The words hung in the cold air of the teepee. Chaitan's expression softened slightly, though worry still creased his brow. "Your heart is noble, but hearts do not always see clearly. This woman is a mystery wrapped in danger. When she wakes, we will hear her story. Then we decide if she stays or goes." On the 4th morning, as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, the woman's eyes opened. They were the color of a summer sky, startling in their clarity. She stared at Tahatan for a long moment, taking in his features, the interior of the teepee, the reality of being alive when she should have been dead. Then, to his surprise, tears began streaming down her pale cheeks. Not tears of fear or confusion, but tears of pure relief. She had survived something terrible, and somehow, impossibly, she had found safety in the last place she ever expected. Her lips moved, forming a single word that would be the beginning of everything. "Thank you." The woman's name was Sarah Brennan, and she spoke her story in a voice that trembled like aspen leaves in wind. Tahatan sat across the fire from her, Winona beside him, while several tribal elders gathered to hear what she had to say. Outside the teepee, the entire village seemed to hold its breath, waiting for answers that might explain why their chief had risked so much for a stranger. Sarah's hands shook as she held the warm tea Winona had prepared. Her fingers were still bandaged from frostbite, and the bruises on her face had faded from purple to a sickly yellow-green. She had been in the village for 2 weeks now, strong enough to sit up and speak, but the haunted look in her eyes suggested that some wounds ran far deeper than flesh. "I came west with my husband 18 months ago," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "James was a good man when I married him. Or so I believed. We settled near Fort Laramie, tried to start a farm. But the land was hard, and James started drinking. The drinking made him mean." She paused, staring into her tea as if the steam held memories she couldn't face directly. Tahatan noticed how her breathing quickened, how her shoulders tensed with each word. Winona reached out and touched Sarah's arm gently, a gesture of support that transcended language and culture. He started hitting me, Sarah continued, her voice stronger now, as if speaking the truth aloud gave her courage. At first, I told myself it would get better. That's what women do, isn't it? We make excuses. We believe in change that never comes. But James didn't get better. He got worse. Much worse. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes that whispered against the hide walls of the teepee. Chaitan, the elder, leaned forward, his expression unreadable. You ran from your husband? This is why you came to die in our land. Sarah shook her head, and something fierce flickered in her pale eyes. I didn't run from James. I ran from the men who killed him. The statement dropped like a stone into still water, rippling through everyone present. Tahatan felt his spine straighten, his senses sharpening. This was not the simple story of an abused wife fleeing her husband. This was something far more dangerous. 3 men came to our farm 4 weeks ago, Sarah said, her voice taking on a flat, distant quality, as if she were describing events that had happened to someone else. They said James owed them money from a card game in town. He did owe them, that much was true. But James had no money to pay, and I had nothing of value except a locket my mother gave me before she died. She reached beneath her worn dress and pulled out a simple gold locket, tarnished and dented. They wanted this. James refused to give it to them, not because he cared about my mother's memory, but because he was drunk and stupid and proud. They shot him. Right there in our cabin. He died in seconds. Winona made a soft sound of sympathy. Even Chaitan's stern expression had softened slightly. But Sarah wasn't finished. They didn't leave after killing James. They decided since I was alone now, I belonged to them. They kept me for 3 weeks. Tied me up at night, used me during the day. They talked about selling me to a brothel in Deadwood, said I'd fetch a good price being young and blonde. The words hung in the air like poison. Tahatan felt rage building in his chest, hot and righteous. He had seen enough of the white man's cruelty to know Sarah spoke the truth. The scars on her body, the rope burns on her wrists, the look of someone who had stared into the abyss and somehow climbed back out, these things could not be faked. How did you escape? He asked, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. A ghost of a smile crossed Sarah's face, bitter and cold. They got careless. Left me tied with one hand instead of both while they played cards one night. I worked the knot loose over hours. When they were all drunk and asleep, I ran. I took one horse and rode until it collapsed. Then I walked. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get as far away as possible. I thought maybe I'd freeze to death before they found me. I thought maybe that would be better than what they'd do if they caught me. She looked up then, meeting Tahatan's eyes directly. You saved my life. I know your people have no reason to trust me or help me. I know I've brought nothing but trouble to your village. But I need you to understand something. Those men, Carson, Pike, and Dutch, they won't stop looking for me. Not because they care about me, but because I'm a loose end. I heard them talk about things, robberies they planned, people they'd killed. They can't let me live to tell anyone. The implications settled over the gathered group like a heavy blanket. Tahatan had not just rescued a woman from the cold. He had brought a pursued fugitive into his village, 3 dangerous white men potentially following her trail. The danger was real, immediate, and deadly. The council fire burned bright against the winter darkness, casting dancing shadows across the faces of the gathered tribal leaders. Every decision of importance was made here, in the ceremonial circle where their ancestors' wisdom was believed to flow through the smoke and into the hearts of those who led. Tonight, the weight of that responsibility pressed heavy on every shoulder. Tahatan stood before them, Sarah at his side. She had insisted on coming despite her weakness, despite the fear that made her hands tremble. She understood that her fate would be decided tonight, and she wanted to face it standing rather than cowering in a teepee. Winona had dressed her in a simple deer-hide dress, and someone had braided her blonde hair in the Lakota style. The gesture was small but significant, an acknowledgement of her humanity, if not yet her belonging. Chaitan spoke first, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 7 decades of survival. 3 times the white men have come to our lands promising peace and bringing war. 3 times we have welcomed them with open hands and been repaid with broken treaties and stolen children. We have learned that mercy toward the Wasichu is often repaid with bullets. Why should this woman be different? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. Tahatan saw the fear in their eyes, the memories of past betrayals written in every lined face. His people had suffered greatly at the hands of white settlers. To ask them to shelter one now, to risk everything they had left, seemed like asking them to forget every painful lesson they had learned. Because she is not them, Tahatan said firmly. She did not come here to take our land or break promises. She came here dying, running from the same violence that has plagued our people. The men who hunt her are the same kind of men who raid our camps and slaughter our buffalo for sport. Should we not recognize a common enemy? Red Cloud, a warrior whose scarred face told stories of countless battles, stood up. His voice was sharp as flint. You speak of common enemies, but what happens when those men come here looking for her? They will not care that we gave her shelter. They will see only Indians hiding a white woman. They will bring soldiers. They will burn our village and scatter our families. One woman's life is not worth the destruction of everything we have built. Sarah stepped forward then, and every eye turned to her. She had been learning their language from Winona, and though her pronunciation was rough, she spoke in Lakota now, showing respect for their ways. I understand your fear. I understand your anger. If I could take back the danger I brought to your village, I would. But I cannot change what has already happened. I can only offer you this truth: I would rather die than bring harm to the people who saved me. She reached into her dress and pulled out a knife, one of the small blades used for preparing food. Before anyone could react, she placed it against her own throat. If my presence here threatens you, then I choose to end that threat now. I will not let the kindness of Chief Tahatan become the destruction of his people. I have already lived through hell. I am not afraid of death. The gathering erupted in chaos. Tahatan moved instantly, knocking the knife from Sarah's hand and pulling her back from the edge of her own desperation. Winona hurried forward, checking Sarah for injury, muttering about foolish white women and dramatic gestures. But in that moment of raw honesty, something had shifted in the council circle. Makawi, the eldest woman in the tribe, rose slowly to her feet. She rarely spoke at councils, but when she did, everyone listened. Her voice was soft but carried clearly in the sudden silence. This woman speaks from her heart, not her head. She speaks like one who has known true suffering and found the other side of it. I see in her eyes what I have seen in the eyes of our own women who have survived the raids, the kidnappings, the violations that white soldiers bring. She is broken, yes, but she is not yet destroyed. She fights to live even while offering to die. This is the spirit of a survivor. Makawi walked to Sarah, lifting her chin to look into her eyes. You ask what makes her different from the other Wasichu? I will tell you. She sees us as people, not savages. She respects our ways even though she does not know them. She offers her life to protect ours. These are not the actions of someone who sees themselves as superior. These are the actions of someone who has learned humility through suffering. The old woman turned to address the full council. We Lakota pride ourselves on our strength, our courage, our honor. But the greatest strength is not in the ability to destroy enemies. It is in the wisdom to recognize when someone is not an enemy at all. This woman is no threat to us. She is a mirror showing us our own pain reflected in pale skin and blonde hair. If we turn away from her suffering because of the color of her face, then we have become no better than those who turn away from ours. The words settled over the gathering like snow, soft but impossible to ignore. One by one, the faces around the fire began to change, anger softening into consideration, fear transforming into cautious acceptance. Red Cloud, the warrior who had spoken so harshly before, looked at Sarah with new eyes. If she stays, she must contribute. We do not carry dead weight in winter. Can you work, white woman? Can you earn your place among us? Sarah nodded, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I can sew. I can cook. I can tend children and help with tanning hides. I am not strong yet, but I will be. I will work harder than anyone has ever worked. I swear it on my mother's memory. Tahatan felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. The council was turning. They were choosing mercy over fear, humanity over prejudice. Chaitan stood, his expression grave but accepting. Then it is decided. The woman stays until spring. We will watch for the men who hunt her. If they come, we will deal with them as we deal with all threats to our people. But we will not send her back to die in the snow. We are Lakota. We remember what it means to protect the weak, even when it is difficult, even when it is dangerous. Spring came slowly to the plains, ice retreating inch by stubborn inch as the world remembered how to breathe without freezing. Sarah had survived the winter, but she had done more than merely survive. She had transformed. The broken woman who had stumbled into the village 4 months ago had been forged into something new in the fire of Lakota life, something harder and clearer and more alive than she had ever been before. Her hands, once soft and pale, were now calloused and brown from constant work. She had learned to tan hides until they were butter-soft, to stitch moccasins that wouldn't fall apart after a week of walking, to prepare pemmican that would last through lean times. Winona had taken her on as an apprentice of sorts, teaching her the properties of healing plants and the proper ceremonies for gathering them. The old woman rarely praised, but Sarah had seen approval in her eyes when a difficult stitching was completed properly or when she remembered the correct prayer before harvesting sage. The children of the village had adopted her with the casual acceptance that only the young possess. They had initially approached her with curiosity, touching her blonde hair with tentative fingers and giggling at her pale skin. But children judge people by their actions, not their appearance, and Sarah had proven herself quickly. She told them stories in improving Lakota, taught them English words when they asked, and never lost patience with their endless questions. They called her Waste Win, Good Woman, a name given casually but carrying more weight than any formal title. Not everyone had accepted her so easily. There were still those who watched her with suspicion, who fell silent when she approached, who remembered too much pain to forgive the color of her skin. Sarah didn't blame them. She understood that trust was something earned in drops and lost in floods. She worked harder than anyone, volunteered for the tasks no one wanted, and spoke always with respect. Slowly, grudgingly, even the hardest hearts began to soften. Powhatan watched her transformation with something that felt dangerously like pride. He had told himself that his interest in her survival was purely humanitarian, the duty of a chief to protect those who needed protection. But he was beginning to understand that he had been lying to himself. There was something about Sarah's fierce determination to live, her refusal to be broken by everything that had tried to break her, that called to something deep in his spirit. They spent hours together, often in comfortable silence as they worked. He was teaching her to ride properly, Lakota style, and she was proving to be a natural horsewoman. She sat a horse like she had been born to it, her body moving with the animal's rhythm rather than fighting against it. He taught her to shoot a bow, to track game, to read the signs in earth and sky that told stories to those who knew how to listen. "You are becoming one of us," he said one evening as they rode back from checking snares in the hills. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and red, painting the world in fire. Sarah looked at him, her blue eyes serious. "I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm still white. I still come from the people who have hurt yours. I can't change that." "No," Powhatan agreed. "But you can choose who you become from this day forward. The past is written. The future is still being painted. You could leave when the traders come through next month. Go back to your people, start over somewhere else. But I think you would regret it. I think you have found something here that you were searching for without knowing you were searching." The words hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Sarah felt her heart beating faster, felt the truth of what he said resonating in her bones. She had found something here among the Lakota, not just safety or survival, but purpose. She belonged in a way she had never belonged in the white world, where women were property and strength was something to be hidden or apologized for. "What if those men come?" she asked quietly. "What if I've brought death to your doorstep?" "Then we will face it together," Powhatan said simply. "That is what family does." The word family struck Sarah like a physical blow. Tears sprang to her eyes before she could stop them. She had no family left in the world, no one who cared whether she lived or died. Until now. Until this strange, impossible new life had given her sisters in the women who taught her their crafts, brothers in the warriors who nodded to her in passing, parents in Winona and the elders who had chosen mercy over fear. They rode in silence after that, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence of understanding, of connection, of something beginning that neither was quite ready to name. When they reached the village, Sarah dismounted and turned to Powhatan, her voice steady and sure. "I'm not leaving. This is my home now. These are my people. Whatever comes, I face it here." Powhatan smiled then, a rare expression that transformed his usually serious face. "Good. Because we are not finished making a Lakota woman out of you. Tomorrow, Winona will teach you to properly curse at stubborn horses. It is an essential skill." Sarah laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and realized with a start that she couldn't remember the last time she had truly laughed before coming to this village. The broken woman was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had been shattered and remade stronger in the fractured places. She was becoming Sarah of the Lakota, and the transformation was not yet complete. But for the first time in her life, she was becoming someone she actually wanted to be. That night, as she lay in her bedroll in Winona's teepee, Sarah heard the old woman's voice in the darkness. "You love him. My grandson. I see it in how you look at him." Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't admitted it even to herself, but Winona had spoken the truth. Is it that obvious? To me, yes. To him, maybe not yet. Men are often blind to what is right in front of them. But he loves you too, though he fights against it. He thinks he should not love a white woman. He thinks it betrays his people. Maybe he's right, Sarah whispered. Maybe, Winona agreed. Or maybe love does not care about the color of skin. Maybe love is the thing that heals wounds between peoples. I am old. I have seen much hate. I am ready to see some love before I die. Be patient with him. He will find his way to truth eventually. The warning came with the morning mist, carried by a young warrior named Two Eagles who had been scouting the eastern approaches. 3 white men were riding toward the village, armed and asking questions about a blonde woman. They were still a day's ride away, but moving with the determination of men on a mission. The time for hiding was over. The reckoning had arrived. The village transformed instantly from peaceful morning routines into controlled preparation for danger. Women gathered children inside teepees while warriors checked weapons and positioned themselves strategically throughout the camp. Tahatan called an emergency council, but this time there was no debate about whether to protect Sarah. She had become one of them, and the Lakota protected their own. Sarah stood in the center of the council circle, her face pale but composed. She had known this day might come, had lived with the shadow of it hanging over her newfound happiness. Now that it was here, she felt almost relieved. The waiting was over. Whatever happened next, at least it would be resolved. I can leave, she said in fluent Lakota now, her pronunciation nearly perfect after months of daily practice. I can ride out and meet them away from the village. If they take me, they won't bother you. No. Tahatan's voice was flat, absolute. That is not how we solve problems. You are under our protection. They will not take you. Red Cloud stepped forward, his scarred face grim. 3 men, well armed. They are not soldiers, so there will be no army looking for them if they disappear. This makes our choice simpler. They are hunters who have wandered too close to the wolf den. They will not leave. The implication was clear and brutal. Sarah felt her stomach twist, not with fear for herself but with guilt for what might come. I don't want you to kill for me. I've seen enough death. I don't want to be the cause of more. Winona, standing beside her, placed a weathered hand on Sarah's shoulder. Child, these men killed your husband and did worse to you. They will do the same to others if they are allowed to leave. This is not about vengeance. This is about stopping evil before it spreads further. You did not create their violence. You are merely the excuse they used to exercise it. The wisdom in those words settled something in Sarah's heart. She was not responsible for the choices of evil men. She was only responsible for her own choices, and she chose to stand with the people who had saved her, who had given her a life worth living again. The men arrived at sunset, riding into the village with the arrogant confidence of people who believed themselves superior. Carson, Pike, and Dutch, Sarah recognized them instantly despite the months that had passed. Her body tensed with remembered trauma, but she forced herself to stand tall, to meet their eyes without flinching. She was not the same terrified woman they had tormented. She had been forged into something stronger in the fires of survival. Carson, the leader, was a big man with cruel eyes and a smile that had never reached them. He looked around the village with barely concealed contempt before his gaze landed on Sarah. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by anger, followed by that terrible smile. Well, been quite a search, Sarah. You led us on a merry chase. Tahatan stepped forward, positioning himself between Sarah and the 3 men. He spoke in English, his accent thick but his meaning clear. You are not welcome here. Leave now. The woman is under our protection. Dutch, the youngest of the 3, laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your protection? That's rich. We're not here to cause trouble with you Indians. We're here for what belongs to us. That woman is a thief and a murderer. She killed a man and stole his horse. We're just bringing her to justice. The lies flowed smooth as oil, the kind of lies that white law would believe without question. A white woman's word against 3 white men meant nothing. An Indian's word meant even less. If they took Sarah to the nearest fort or town, she would hang, and no truth would save her. Sarah felt the familiar helplessness creeping back, the understanding that the world was built to protect men like these and destroy women like her. But Tahatan didn't move. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of absolute certainty. You lie. The woman told us her story. We believe her. You will not take her. You will leave now, or you will not leave at all. Pike, the one with dead eyes and hands that were never still, reached for his gun. He wasn't fast enough. 3 Lakota arrows found him before his fingers touched metal, one in the chest, one in the throat, one in the belly. He fell from his horse without a sound, dead before he hit the ground. The horses spooked, and Carson and Dutch fought to control them while trying to process what had just happened. They were surrounded by warriors who had appeared from shadows and teepees, bows drawn and aimed with deadly precision. They had walked into a trap baited with their own arrogance. Carson's face twisted with rage and fear. "You can't do this. We're white men. There'll be consequences. The army will come." Red Cloud stepped forward, speaking perfect English with an accent that suggested education from missionaries long ago. "The army is far away, and winter has made the passes difficult. By the time anyone comes looking for you, the wolves and ravens will have scattered your bones across the prairie. You came to our land to hunt a woman we have claimed as sister. You brought violence to our doorstep. The consequences are yours to bear, not ours." Dutch's nerve broke first. He spurred his horse, trying to run. He made it 20 feet before an arrow took him in the back. He slumped forward but didn't fall, his horse carrying him another 50 feet before he finally toppled sideways into the snow. 2 eagles jogged after him, checking for life and finding none. Only Carson remained, staring at the ring of warriors around him with the dawning realization that he was going to die. All the power he had taken for granted, all the privilege of being a white man in a land that favored white men, meant nothing here. The Lakota had their own justice, and it was about to be served. Tahatan looked at Sarah. "This choice is yours. He hurt you. He killed your husband. He took your freedom and dignity. We will do as you wish. He can die quickly, or slowly, or you can show him the mercy he never showed you. Decide." Sarah walked forward until she stood directly in front of Carson's horse. She looked up at the man who had haunted her nightmares, who had made her believe she would never be safe again. She saw fear in his eyes now, the same fear she had lived with for weeks under his control. She could order his death. Part of her wanted to. Part of her wanted him to suffer as she had suffered. But as she stood there, surrounded by her new family, wearing Lakota clothing and speaking their language and living their values, she realized that revenge would not heal her. It would only create more poison to carry. "Let him go," she said quietly. "Strip him of his weapons and his horse. Let him walk back to his people and tell them what happened here. Let him carry the memory of this day for the rest of his life. Let him understand that he is only alive because a woman he tortured chose mercy over vengeance. That will haunt him more than death ever could." Tahatan nodded slowly, respect clear in his dark eyes. Warriors moved forward, pulling Carson from his horse and stripping him of everything: guns, knife, coat, boots. They left him standing in the snow in his shirt and trousers, shaking with cold and terror. Red Cloud stepped close, his voice low and deadly. "If you ever return to this territory, if you ever speak our location to soldiers, if you ever harm another woman, we will find you. We will remember your face. You will die slowly and badly. Do you understand?" Carson nodded frantically, then turned and began walking east, stumbling through the snow in his sock feet. They watched him go until he was a small dark figure against the white landscape, a man carrying the weight of his own evil with no way to set it down. Sarah watched too, and felt something inside her finally release. The chapter was closed. The hunters were gone. She was truly free. That night, as the village celebrated with a feast, Tahatan found Sarah standing at the edge of the camp, looking out at the stars. He stood beside her in comfortable silence for a long moment before speaking. "You showed great wisdom today. Great strength." "I showed what you taught me," Sarah replied. "You and Winona and all the others. You taught me that strength isn't just about surviving. It's about choosing what kind of person you become after survival." Tahatan reached out and took her hand, the gesture simple but profound. "Will you stay? Not as a refugee or someone under protection, but as one of us? As my wife, if you will have me?" Sarah turned to him, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy now, not pain. "Yes. 1,000 times yes. I was broken when I came here. You didn't just save my life. You helped me build a new one. I love you. I love this life. I love these people. I'm home." They stood together under the stars, 2 people from different worlds who had found each other across a divide of culture and pain and history. Around them, the village sang and celebrated, welcoming the spring and the victory and the love that had bloomed in the unlikeliest soil. Sarah, the broken white woman who had stumbled into their lives, had become Sarah of the Lakota, and her story was just beginning.